there, and welcome back to Reclaiming America. I'm Greta, and I am here with the two gentlemen who are ever insightful, rarely wrong, but not always right. Bill Moore and Dan Roman. So, Dan, would you like to take it away first?
Yes, I'm going to your comment you just made, one of us is always wrong and one of us is always right. And I just have
That's not what I said.
I just have one sentence. How about them Cowboys?
That's not what I said. It's on tape.
He's silent. Come on, Bill. Let's hear it. For 6 months, all we heard. Come on.
The only thing that stopped them from going to the championship was talent.
Their players, their coaching staff, and their owner. Just that.
However, it is next year.
Yeah, that's what you've been saying since 1995. All right, let's throw it back to Greta because she does have a great topic to open up with. Go ahead, Greta.
Okay, this is the breaking story, and I'm really enjoying it. So it turns out there was a release today by one of those watchdog groups that has discovered that the Department of Homeland Security paid an activist group of college students at the University of Rhode Island a grant. And the grant money came from what was supposed to be anti-terrorist, combating terrorism funds. So they took this money and they said, hey, how, and they give them a lot of big hints. How would you use this money? Well, Rhode Island came back and said that propaganda and misinformation is very concerning, especially when it includes immigration and racial justice, and it had become disruptive. So they asked DHS for the money to run community-created counter-propaganda, which can be used, and I quote, for socially beneficial purposes. Indeed, because the public has long been recognized as being suggestible.
Oh my. Bill, I'll let you go first.
I don't know where to start on this one.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, this is a surprise that the government's misusing money and they're using it to label and take out conservatives again. I mean, this is just the IRS on 2.0, and Homeland Security on 2.0. It doesn't get any better. Every time we hear it, it gets worse.
Yeah, I mean, I would call it Soros 2.0 because some people know, but a lot don't, that Soros funds groups similar to this. A great unknown that many people don't know is they pay people to be online and to put comments on social media posts. So, for example, if your local news station or NBC News or CNN or any one of them or Fox puts up a video or a post, they have paid people to go on there and either debunk the post if it's against what they believe or support it. And a lot of these people have 40 and 50 accounts. So when you're on social media and you think there's this huge outcry either in support or against of a particular news item, it's more than likely one or two people doing their thing. This is just that same scenario, but the government now doing it, which is really scary.
Yeah, and Soros is also using his money. To example, he has people writing letters to the editor, which they send to Democratic headquarters, and all they got to do is put somebody's name on it and mail it in. But it's all propaganda.
And what's really interesting is they're couching it as counter propaganda or anti-propaganda.
It's anti-missile.
Straight out of the Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital, pretty much.
But wasn't it DHS who originally tried to build a ministry of disinformation? Am I getting that wrong?
It's been a while, but yeah, there was that. I forget if it was DHS. It was one of the groups, one of the government agencies was trying to do that. Not too long ago. What, 4 years ago? It just shows how quickly we're sliding into the abyss.
Would that be the Russian collusion file, as an example?
Yep.
Bill. That was completely true.
I told you, the only trouble with conspiracy theories is we've ran out of making them all true. There's none left.
Yeah, last I counted, we were 49-0. But it's, this really, to me, this is really creeping into some really serious, dangerous issues or, times, because he who controls the media controls the population, right? We've known that forever, and they've progressively taken more control. But this is essentially, in my opinion, the final step, right? If they can take it to that level where they're using college kids to manipulate and control the media even more so than it already is, to me, there's no coming back. What do you guys think?
Guess what each blog post was worth to those students? $250.
So each time they put a post up, they got $250.
I'm sure there were measures of if you get this many, looks or whatever, but these kids already know how to manipulate that process. But $250.
Geez, they want to pay me $250. I'll be a millionaire inside of a year. It's not that hard.
Right?
I mean, if you know what you're doing, you can easily get people to like, share, comment, all that stuff. Except on our stuff, nobody does that. No, I'm only kidding. That's because they throttle us. But how do we combat it? If the government's actively doing it, I am unaware. Are they taking any steps? Is somebody suing on this, taking it to court, or is it just too soon to know?
I think it's too soon. But I also know that there are more and more people, a growing number of people, another watchdog group, who say that people are turning to podcasts and even like the Breakfast Club with Charlemagne. They're turning to get news and opinions, not to media outlets, and certainly not to the American government.
Well, I've been saying that for a couple of years now, right? Podcasts like this one. Yeah, we might lean a little bit one way or the other, but we don't lie. We present things as factually as possible. We're going by a lot of times what the news media is telling us. So sometimes we get it wrong because they got it wrong. But I agree with you, Greta. In that watchdog group, podcasts are becoming the news.
Yes.
The mainstream media, mainstream news is finished. And all you got to do is look at people like Joe Rogan, who's not necessarily news oriented, but every once in a while he covers it. He gets 15 million views. You have people like Tim Pool. Tim Pool averages a little under 1 million a night. CNN's lucky if they get 100,000. It's there's other ones I can mention out there, and there's a lot of good to that. There's also some bad, to be honest with you, because much like us, they have to go by what they're seeing in the media. And occasionally we get it wrong, they get it wrong. But to our credit and their credit, I think when we do find something that we thought was true to be false, we'll admit it at least. Mainstream media certainly will not.
Right.
Dan, I'm the first one to admit when you're wrong.
And you're the last one to admit when you are. How about them Cowboys?
All right, we're back to that again, huh?
You shoved it down our throats every show for the last 6 months, my friend. I'm only going to do it this show. After that, I let it go.
Well, that's because they're coming back next year to take the whole thing.
Delusion.
By the way, talking a little bit, just an extension of what Greta's talking about.
Sure.
Did you hear what the exchange that Congressman Goldman had with a fentanyl mother who was testifying at the hearings, the impeachment hearings?
Go ahead, Greta.
I did, and I cried. The little girl, the picture of her little girl, Ashley, behind her, looked exactly like my daughter. Exactly like my daughter. I have a picture of my daughter in that exact pose, and it broke my heart. It really did.
Yeah, it's all of this. I mean, at this point, even seeing anything, it makes you want to cry, doesn't it? I mean,
but when you
that
start
particular
thinking about
case, go ahead.
How open they can attack somebody and get away with it. I mean, that man turned around and insulted that woman's intelligence because, quote, she wouldn't understand what high crimes and misdemeanors are based on her limited knowledge, which is insulting 101. Mm-hmm. And then she turns around and she answers him and he says, wouldn't it be a better idea if we put more resources and money toward the Border Patrol? And her answer was absolutely brilliant. She says, right now you have Border Patrol making sandwiches for illegals. Maybe we should put them back to doing their jobs again. And he just was not, He's not hearing it, but he openly insulted that woman on television, and it seems to be okay.
Yeah, but my point to that, Bill, is how's that any different than what it's been for years now? I mean, they openly, they being all members of Congress, and I'll be upfront, I think it's both sides of the aisle. They think we're idiots, and they treat us like that. You know, the most basic of things, they think we can't grasp an understanding of it. They're so insulated in D.C. You know, sometimes they'll say the right things because, you know, it might be an election year for them. But I think in general, 99.99% of them at this point think we're complete idiots and that we're their lessers, right? So they have to rule over us. And
That's what tyranny elite by definition is.
it absolutely is. And I'm sorry to say I'm seeing it in both parties, you know. Again, you've got the occasional one that's not, but yeah, it's exacerbating to me because I've been seeing it ramp up over the last 40 years, but in particular the last 4 or 5.
Did you see Jamie? I think it's Jamie Dimon from Morgan and his exchange on, I think it was either MSNBC or CNN, and he actually shocked them all about his positive comments about MAGA.
I did not. Can you tell us a little bit more?
Yeah, he was on there, and he started saying to the announcer, "I think we should stop picking on the MAGA people and treating them like they don't know what they're talking about. They're supporting Trump because of the things he did, not because of what he says, because of what he did." And he goes out and he says, "And you know something? He didn't do a bad job with China. He didn't do a bad job with the Middle East. He had the economy booming, and people don't want things to be done correctly, and they want things to be done, not just talked about." And actually, the CNN reporter was absolutely shocked and dismayed at that. But if Jamie Dimon is starting to say that, that's important because he's a big influencer.
Well, another one along the same lines is Kevin O'Leary, the guy from Shark Tank, right? Mr. Wonderful, I think, or he goes by, or whatever his name is, right? I see him.
Two of us?
What's that?
There's two of us.
Oh, brother. All I'm going to say, Bill, how about them Cowboys? Moving on. You know, you hear him is essentially saying the same things as what you've just said, where he talks about, you know, here's how things were under Trump, here's how they are now. And if you're being fair to him, he does his best to try and keep his political leanings out of it. They're there. You can see them and hear them. I mean, he's obviously leans conservative, but I have to give him credit that he does his best to be factual with what he's saying. You know, when he talks about the economy, he is just shredding California and New York, you know, for their policies. The federal government he shreds. True businessmen, they know the reality. They see what it is. They deal with it on a daily basis, right? They're running companies. They know the effect it's having on those companies. And I think that's a large reason why they're out talking. And to your other point, you know, the news media, when they're hearing this stuff, I love looking at their face because they don't like it. They hate it. Thoughts?
None.
This is the first time Bill has ever not had words to say.
Oh, God.
Even Greta's stunned, Bill.
Because you're so thorough. I mean, there's nothing left to say. You covered it all perfectly. You're my hero when I grow up, you know.
Okay. We see how
But
this is
Dan,
going to go.
You know, they can't be too wrong in this view. I found out from a source, a very close source to my family, that the Chinese giant Tencent is about to start massive layoffs globally in this company. It's like a media company on Monday.
Really?
Minimum 5,000, maximum, who knows? Not to mention Google, who's going to do another round, Wayfair, who's going to do about 2,000, and then Macy's had to, of course, jump on the bandwagon today and say, we're cutting 2,000 jobs. So if everything is so great and so wonderful, Bidenomics is working, everything's beautiful, why do we need all these massive layoffs? What's going on?
Yeah, and they're talking about potential massive layoffs in the auto industry now because cars are not selling. I mean,
Well, I understand you can get a bunch of Teslas in Chicago really cheap.
I heard that.
Batteries not included.
Not included.
Because they've all worn out. But, I was watching a few things this week, and they were talking about the domestics in particular, which is, Ford, Stellantis, which owns Chrysler, Jeep, and all them. They were talking about the sales of cars. And one thing that they're focusing on, which I guess is a big thing in the car industry, is days that they're available, right? So how long would it take to sell every car they had available in a particular area? Dodge is now, some of their brands are 500 plus days. So if you kind of do the math on that and go back 500 plus days, that's a year and a half. You're looking at the 2022 model year sitting on dealer lots. That's insane, and if there's that much inventory sitting on lots at this point, it's inevitable, especially after they all had the strike last fall.
Well, yeah, but how much of this are they sitting on lots that are basically the electric cars that nobody wants, that they're forcing down people?
To your question on that, one of the ones they were talking about is the Mach-E, the Mustang Mach-E. There is a 700 and something day supply of them nationwide. So if they did not make a single one and the sales were continuing on as they are right now, they wouldn't sell the last one that's already made until sometime in late 2025, early 2026. That's
just about 2 years.
That's crazy when you think about it. And think about all the other factors that drive with that, right? So it's not just the dealer and the car manufacturers making money. It's the mechanics to prep the cars and get them out the door and, repair them and all that. They did a whole joke on how Ford's got a whole industry on recalls because they have every car they have is recalled multiple times. But you're talking about the finance, banking. If people aren't buying cars, there's no loans being generated. So the banks can't generate funds and they can't pay their employees. So this is going to cascade down. All the manufacturers for the parts for the vehicles. This is huge. So I think I believe we're already in a recession, but I think the worst is yet to come, and it's going to be really bad.
Yeah, but you know what? They're going to do whatever they can to prop it up through November.
Well, that's what they have been doing for a year now. That's why
they're going to do even more because they can't have a recession and have any hopes of him being reelected.
How much more can they do with the interest rates? I mean, I did some quick checking.
Well, look what they're doing. He's now going out. He's relieving more loans. Student
loans. Yeah.
He's going out and do everything he possibly can to turn voters his way. I wouldn't be surprised if he started looking at mortgage loans next. And finding a way around those too.
I wouldn't be surprised either. And that, again, think about the cascading effect of that. And on that note, guess what?
Must be break time.
It's break time. So we are going to take a short break, and then we'll come back to Reclaiming America.
Another Lori joke. Welcome back to Reclaiming America. Greta, Dan, and I have a lot to discuss yet coming up. We're going to go now and discuss the Iowa caucuses and what has happened since Trump narrowly squeaked out a victory by 30 or 40 points.
Oh my God.
It was close, Bill.
Right.
Oh my God, I was shocked.
Dallas was with the other team.
Yeah, pretty much, right? Yeah, I mean, the one thing that did surprise me, because I have talked to several people in Iowa the last 3-4 weeks, they actually thought Ramaswamy was going to do better than he did. We talk about polling could be wrong. The polling was wrong. He bombed.
Yeah, but he dropped out. But he's endorsed Trump. And you know what? He's a candidate for VP. He's on that short list.
He is the VP, in my opinion.
No, I don't think so, because there's another person out there who I think might bump him.
Tim Scott's the one Trump was talking about.
No, Tim Scott, by the way, just endorsed Trump and went around Nikki Haley, which went over well in South Carolina.
I'll bet it did.
No, he is flirting with the idea of Tucker Carlson.
I've heard that one too. I'll be honest with you. My opinion on that is that's just to drum stuff up because Tucker's so big, it just gets Trump's out there. I Trump was actually, I saw him talking about Tim Scott, and I'm like, everything he's saying, Scott is definitely in the running, like strongly is.
I'm still going to go with my first love is which is going to be the North Dakota governor.
Kristi Noem.
Oh, I think Christie's to the inside track for this one.
To that point, though, she's staying pretty quiet right now. Wouldn't you?
Which is a good thing.
Wouldn't you? Yeah.
But one does not need to go out there and call cannon fodder on your position.
Right.
Yeah, but wouldn't you think she'd be at least saying something? I mean, she's been dead quiet. Not that I blame her, by the way, but I would think if she's seriously, they're considering her for VP, they'd start pushing her a little bit. I don't know. It's a crapshoot. I don't think Trump has any idea right now, but I think it's going to be Ramaswamy.
I think we can eliminate Nikki.
You think?
List.
What about DeSantis? My former boy, my boy DeSantis.
I'm not sure about that one yet because I still think DeSantis is only hanging on in hopes that they knock Trump out.
It's the only reason he's on.
Yeah.
I mean, could he be? I mean, he finished second. I'll give him that.
Not by much, but he did. And he was not predicted to be second, so he overachieved.
He did, but 30 whatever points, whatever it was. I mean, Ron, I liked you. I supported you. Walk away, my friend. Walk away because you're done. And I don't see him ever taking VP slot. I think his ego would not allow that. What do you think?
It would all depend because don't forget, in this particular case, we all know that you only got 4 years and Trump's gone if he wins. He can't do 3 terms.
Yeah, but that's presuming the VP slot's good for getting elected. There haven't been many VPs that did become elected. I mean, the last one was Bush.
But in many cases, it has been a launching point to become the presidential candidate, whether you win or not.
True, but more often than not, it's the not the win. When you look at it, but I just we've talked about before. I see DeSantis as Trump light as far as he's got the same beliefs, but his policies are the same, but he's more well-rounded. I don't know if that's a good word to use.
He's a little more polished.
Polished. There you go. It's a better word. I just don't. That all said, I think his ego is maybe not as big as Trump's, but it ain't far from it right now. I just don't see him taking that slot. I see him, by the way, something like SecDef. I could see.
If he can't be in the top 2, he'll stay where he is.
You think? I don't know.
And sit back and then come out again in 4 years and try it again.
Imagine, though, like we were talking about last week on the show, the struggles of the military. I think DeSantis could turn it around in 3-4 years easily. Knowing what you guys were talking about last week, that would put one hell of a feather in his cap and then ultimately propel him onto the presidency. I could definitely see it as a possibility. I'm not saying it's definite.
But what people forget, and unfortunately, when we went to Volar, or Volunteer Army, which we were all in at some point, we lost the ability of having your neighbor or one of your relatives. Everybody knew somebody who was in the military. You served for 2 years, you went home, but you served. That has now shrunk. I mean, you look at a family, you can count on maybe one finger or 2 fingers the number of people in that immediate family who remotely want near the military. I don't know about you, Greta, but I'll talk on my side of the house. None of my kids, none of my brothers, I'm the only one that did military. Whereas under the draft system, everybody did their 2 in 1 home, but you had a much closer tie to it, which is one of the problems we've dealt with when they start, soldiers start getting killed. Again, years ago, you knew somebody knew somebody there. Nowadays, it's a name on a board. And, very few people realize that and know those people. And that's a detriment for the military and recruiting for the military.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we talked about it at length last week. Let me kind of switch things a little bit. Do you think Iowa tells us anything moving forward? Or is it just
No,
everything we already knew?
no, I think it was appropriately said that nobody who's ever won the IRA caucus has ever gone on to be president.
What do you think, Greta?
I agree. The caucuses are lovely and they're fun and they're interesting and they make for great copy. Okay, they really do. And the outlets send all these people to cover them, but it's very rare that anybody goes on to win the presidency. There are tougher places that have to be won, right?
And I concur with all that. That said, I think it did show just how strong Trump is, though.
That was the one thing it did.
I think, there was a lot of people out there, and obviously it's wishful thinking, that thought maybe Trump wouldn't do as well as he did, and they got slapped down pretty hard. But it is Iowa, right? What's up next? New Hampshire, South Carolina.
New Hampshire will be a kind of a bellwether because it's going to be more of an eliminating thing than anything else. Failure in New Hampshire is going to maybe drive Nikki Haley out. If she loses there in South Carolina, I don't see where she can even stay in the race.
Oh, if she loses South Carolina, she's got
South Carolina.
If she
She's
stays,
going to lose South Carolina.
if she stays in,
30 points.
30 points.
You think she's going to lose South Carolina by 30
You're
points?
losing her by 30 points to Trump.
That would be, if she stayed in after that, I mean, wow. I think she'll do better than that. Now, when I say better, I mean maybe 20 points. Okay. I think Trump's going to win in a landslide, but that is her home state. I got to give her home field advantage, but it's kind of like the Cowboys had home field advantage, and we're favored by 3 and lost by 40.
You're actually favored by 10.
And lost by 40.
That is still correct.
Actually, I was, because I'm not counting those 2 touchdowns at the end. But anyway, getting back to the topic, New Hampshire, I think, to your point, Bill, is a bellwether. I think it's going to show really where it is. And let's assume, for the sake of argument, Trump does as well or close to it as he did in Iowa. Is it over at that point?
I don't think it's over, but it's going to start eliminating again. I think I'm telling you that within 2 states, you're going to lose Haley.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be gone. Whether DeSantis leaves, I doubt it because he'll ride it to the end. Though I don't think he's got a Chinaman's chance of winning in Florida either. I think he's down with 30, 40 points.
Well, I saw a couple things online. Again, saw it online, so take that with a grain of salt that he's struggling financially. His campaign is. They're just not getting
the
the
big donors ran to Nikki.
Yeah. And how'd that work out?
How's that working for him?
How'd that work out for you? I think the whole thing could be over before March.
Oh, I agree. I don't think we don't leave March 5th without one person in charge, and it might happen beforehand.
I actually think it will be before.
And the biggest thing that's going to happen is when the Supreme Court makes a decision at the end of February.
Well, it could, by the time they go to make that decision, I'm starting to believe it could be over. If he wins New Hampshire by, let's say, 20, 25, 30, South Carolina, if Greta's right, he wins that by 30. Everybody's going to lose their money. I mean, it's bound to 3 now, right?
Yeah, but you're talking about the Supreme Court's going to rule whether he can be kicked off the ballot.
Oh, I understand that. So you think,
and if they substantiate that, it's a different ballgame.
You think they'll hang on just because of that?
I would think that at least DeSantis is going to hang on till he knows that Trump has got it locked in and he can't be kicked off the ballot, because that's what he's waiting for. He knows he can't take him out otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. But I would argue, why isn't somebody telling him drop out, and if Trump does get booted, then you're going to go to the convention with no true leader. Then you're going to get nominated then. Although everybody's saying your favorite person, Rona, likes Haley. So do they push for Haley at that point?
I want to know, truly, this is the biggest point of curiosity I've had for a couple of years. I want to know if Joe Biden took a sure thing like New Hampshire, okay? Not 100% sure, but you know what I mean. Took a good bet like New Hampshire, threw him under the bus, said, "You're not the first primary state anymore," moved the first primary to South Carolina. I want to know how that works out for him as a write-in in New Hampshire, because he's a write-in. He moved it to South Carolina. He didn't register in New Hampshire.
My opinion, New Hampshire goes red in the election.
Good.
Having lived in upstate New York, been somewhat near New Hampshire. It's not that far away from Albany, where I was from. Knowing people from New Hampshire, they're a very proud people. And
very independent, proud people.
And they are pissed.
Yeah.
And they have very, very long memories. I think, to your point, Greta, Biden cooked himself for the election. And not just Biden, I think any Democrat at this point. I will be not surprised by much if it's red. And I mean a good red, solid red.
But does Biden cooking himself, which God bless him, he's so good at, okay? Does Joe Biden cooking himself mean that Democrats stay home during the primary?
I think they stay home during the primary. I think they stay home during the election.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or they show up and vote for the rest of the ticket and just not the top.
Because we're going to find out
Yeah.
before the next show.
I don't remember when is New Hampshire's now. I know they're doing the write-in, but when did the Democrats want to have it? I guess is the question I want to ask.
I thought it was Tuesday. Am I wrong, Bill?
I don't know. Let me find out.
I'm not sure, because the Democrats wanted South Carolina first and then move things around. And I lost track of where they wanted it. But I just think I will be shocked, actually, if New Hampshire doesn't go red in November. Or at best, it's going to be extremely close. And to be honest with you, I think there's going to be some carryover around the states around it. Now, Massachusetts.
It is Tuesday. Greta is correct.
Okay. So we'll find out. Next week's show, we'll be talking about it.
Yes.
But I could see where this could cascade over to Maine.
Yeah.
Maine, it's tough to call Maine because some people think it's red. There are certain areas that are blue. They have 3 different electorals. I think there could be an effect there. I could see it a little bit in Vermont. It might have an effect. I'm not saying Vermont's going to go red. I don't believe that for a second. And Massachusetts certainly isn't. But I think the vote counts could be a lot closer than what the Dems might anticipate. Again, though, is it Biden? Is it Newsom? Or the other name they've been throwing out a lot lately, good old Michelle Obama. What do you think?
Now,
Too late.
in New Hampshire, interesting enough, I was just looking at something, that there are 2 names that will appear on the Democratic ballot for president. One of them is U.S. Representative Dean Phillips of Minnesota and the 2020 candidate Marianne Williamson.
Yes.
So they're going to be on the ballot, so it's going to be interesting.
I think it's going to be fascinating. I enjoyed this season, except for the obvious grunges and colds that are always going around this time of year. I love this season. I really do. And I think that it's a terrible, foolish thing to throw something in a state like New Hampshire's face and just say, no, you're not number one anymore.
But guess what? I just did another look. The Democrats have 21 names on the ballot for president in New Hampshire.
Isn't that charming? Why didn't I think of that? To split the vote into a million pieces. And you know what? I bet one of the names you don't see is Joe Biden, right? Because he's a writing.
But they are organizing a write-in campaign.
Let me ask you this. Is Kennedy on it?
Where you can only vote in your registered primary. You can't cross over. You can't do unaffiliated. So it's locked to the people.
Is Kennedy on the ballot?
Oh, excuse me. They don't list that name, but you can, unaffiliated can cross over.
Yeah.
I wonder what would happen if Kennedy was on that ballot. Because I'll tell you, the man's coming on like a freight train. I mean, I saw different polls with him. He could really throw a monkey wrench in this election.
They stopped covering him, Dan.
The mainstream has.
Yeah.
But he's not stupid. He's going to the podcasts. and he is getting huge traction there.
Yep.
I mean, to his credit, he figured it out, right? Mainstream media is against him. They're never going to support him, right? So why bother? Any coverage he gets from them is going to be negative. You know, he was on, I forget what the podcast was, and he just eviscerated the host about COVID. I mean, I was sitting there just cracking up, and the poor host, I actually felt bad for the guy because he absolutely eviscerated the guy. And nothing he said was like outlandish, right? It was, the term I would use is it was very presidential the way he handled it. I think he could throw a monkey wrench into it. You know, time will tell.
Now, what's interesting is I read a little bit about what's going on in New Hampshire. The Democratic Party at the state level is moving ahead with everything, and the Democrats at the national level have, quote, said the upcoming primary is both meaningless and detrimental.
Yeah,
that's a quote from the national about that, and here's an answer from the state Democratic Party when their chairman said in a statement, "Well, it's safe to say in New Hampshire the DNC is less popular than the New York Yankees."
Wow, that's saying something. That is Red Sox country, man. Yeah, again, it goes back to what I said earlier. New Hampshire goes red, and whatever number, I forget how many votes electorals they have, but
You're right, they got long memories.
But here's the thing with that. Let's say my hypothesis that Kennedy starts throwing a monkey wrench into it, and things are close. Whatever New Hampshire's votes could be the difference. And the Democratic Party is just FU'd New Hampshire. This could really come back to bite them. Who knows? I mean, it might be wishful thinking too, but I could see it happening. This is going to be a crazy election.
But the check is now on the table, okay? All the deals that were made to put the man, the legend, Joe Biden, in office, all the deals, okay? All the dirty little deals, the check has now come to the table. And this is one of the bills that's coming due, in my opinion. This is a big one.
Well, I would say he's a legend in his own mind, but he doesn't have a mind at this point, so we can't say that anymore. And on that note, it is time for our next break, ladies and gentlemen.
And before you go on the break, I have an answer for you.
Go.
Kennedy is not on the ballot.
Which is what I would have assumed. Let's see what
I'm looking at the list of people who are, and I don't know a damn one of them.
Let's see if Kennedy gets some write-ins. I'd be curious to see if that happens. All right, we got to go to break, guys. So keep staying tuned, and we'll be back in a couple of minutes for our next lively discussion.
Welcome back to Reclaiming America. I'm Greta, and I'm here with my brilliant co-hosts, Bill
and Dan.
I was waiting for it.
I knew this was coming, and I just walked right into it, you know. And that happens to me a lot, you know, but sorry, Dan. Okay.
I'm used to it.
What should we talk
I wouldn't call Dan sorry. That's not nice.
Oh, Lord, you guys are both misquoting me, right?
All I'm going to say is, how about them Cowboys?
Go Cowboys.
All right. So, Bill, you actually, when we were off taking our little break, you had
a brainstorm.
You had a brainstorm, a wonderful topic. Let's go there.
All right, people. We need to discuss what the new plan is to save the border or shut down the border. There's a plan bouncing around Congress that the Democrats think is the greatest idea since chocolate ice cream or bread. And unfortunately, there's a number of Republicans who kind of agree with them. And that's scary. But anyway, to summarize it in very simple terms, they're saying that 5,000 people a day can cross the border without a problem. Yep. And in a week, if we have 5,000 per day, after a week, we can then start deporting anybody over that number. So in the simple terms, the first 1.8 million people that come into the country are okay. When it's 1,000,008 we deport.
Which begs a question. Does that mean that the ones that they count coming over, or does that mean the 95% that they don't count that are coming over?
That's the ones that they count that they catch and they bring in.
Yeah. So if they're allowing 5,000 in, they're probably counting on 30 to 40,000 per day, because they only count the ones that they can catch or see. And that number is a much higher number coming across than they actually know.
And this is their plan to secure the border. Now, there is also some rumor out there that Biden's trying to make a secret deal with Mexico to kind of shut down the border, or at least control the border till after the election. But I don't know how true that is, but it would not surprise me.
And how many billions is he sending to Mexico as part of that deal? That's my question.
Well, I'm sure they're not a lot of $1 billion that they would send them. I mean, that would be illegal. This is foreign aid. This is probably an opportunity to build jobs there, so these people would not come across. And if you believe that, there's a bridge for sale right around the corner.
I was going to say, yeah, never mind. I'm not going to say what I was going to say. We'll get in trouble. But, let's call it 2 million just to have a round number. They're going to allow 2 million more per year in. Remember, they're getting free housing, free food, free cell phones, free everything. California is now giving them free medical care. By the way, did you see California is proposing that they're going to pay for operations for trans worldwide?
Nice.
So if you live in Guatemala, California is now going to pay for your surgery. That's the proposal. And they're going to, how they're going to pay for it? They're going to charge a 1% tax on the millionaires and billionaires.
Well, of course they are.
Every year.
We'll be out of that state in about 38 seconds.
Oh, but Bill, they got that already taken care of.
They do?
If you move out, they're still going to tax you.
Yep.
For 10 years.
You can ask, but I'm sure I don't think that's going to win when you go through the court system.
It's just absolute lunacy. And let's be honest, they're hoping to get all these people that are coming across the border illegally. This is how they're going to get their vote, right? We'll give you free medical care. We'll give you all this stuff. It's inevitable. I mean, New York's already, I don't know if they've done it or they were talking about it, giving them a vote. New York City, I mean.
They have, New York City has given them a vote in municipal elections.
So they've already and if they've given it to that, the next step will be federal.
Now, the other thing they can't do federal without federal permission.
Well,
and that would take an act of Congress, and we know Congress would never do that.
Well, it depends who's in charge of Congress in 2025.
Yeah, and the other issue that, speaking of that, is New York City is actually considering lowering the vote to 16-year-olds in high school.
Oh, dear God. I say this having been a 16-year-old, and I was actually one of the ones who somewhat knew politics. That's a scary proposition. Why 16, though? Why not 12? Why not 8? I mean, if you're old enough to decide you want to change your sex at 6 years old, why shouldn't they be able to vote? Silence.
I'm with you. I have no problem with them. I think you should give it to them in the womb, and they can fight their way out and survive.
Yeah, nothing upsets the liberals more than when you say, well, how come you're against letting them get tattoos at 8 years old, but you want to let them vote? Or you want to let them change their gender? Or you want to let them get a shot or whatever? But a tattoo, that's a bridge we're not going to cross. You just got to sit here and go, what? But yeah, I see it every day. Usually because, Bill stirs things up over on TikTok. And then I have to be the one that goes in and has conversations with people about it to try and calm them down.
And
go ahead, Bill.
Believe that there is another bridge available over here in Leland that we can sell you. It's under repair.
Well, you did do a video on the 5,000 proposal.
Yeah.
You know what was sad about it, and no offense to our fans, but as Bill was trying to point out in the video and here, the Republicans a lot of them are, well, not a lot, but a nice number.
There's a number of them
supporting it, and everybody's going, no, it's the Democrats. No, it's also some Republicans. But it was interesting to see the commentary on that because, for the most part, it was very positive to you, which actually surprised me.
Well, yeah, I wrote those things about 25 times, so I wouldn't be surprised to anybody. But the other thing which kind of ties to this, and it goes back to Trump and what we talked about earlier. I've been noticing a change in direction of people. You know, for years, we've heard everybody get up and talk this conservative line. You know, I've done this and I'm a conservative and I'm the next A, B, C, D, E. And then they don't do anything when they get in there. And people are now starting to say, we're not interested in what your philosophy is. We want to see what your actions are. You know, and Trump's a fine example of that. I mean, philosophically, if you talk to the guy, he's a moderate Republican, maybe even a blue dog Dem, if you want to look at that. But his actions are conservative, shutting down the border, scaring the living hell out of everybody else in the world so they behave, taking care of the economy and having the economy take off. Those are conservative principles. And is he a true conservative? No, but he practices what he believes. And I think people are now looking and saying, we need to see what your track record is, not what comes out of your mouth.
You think it's the average person seeing it or the media?
I think more and more people are starting to see that, and they're starting to be very, very questioning about that. Look, you say you talk a good game, but then you get in office and you don't do anything else. We need to see what you do. You know, like with all things said with DeSantis does what he says he's going to do. Okay. He may not be the best speaker, but he delivers what he said he's going to do. Trump delivered what he said he's going to do. Haley did not.
No, she didn't. You know, it's again, though, with Trump, it's going to come down to, we've talked about this before, is he going to be allowed to do everything he wants to do? Because last time around, he was blocked in many ways. Think
of it this way. If he wins, he will be a lame duck walking in there. He does not have to worry about re-election. He can do what he needs to do. And he's also going to be 4 years smarter than he walked in there as a lamb in there with a bunch of wolves. He knows what to expect. He can do it because he knows he doesn't have to worry about re-election.
Exactly.
I agree with you on things like cabinet positions, you know, those type of policies. But ultimately, he needs Congress on his side. And let's be honest, they weren't backing him very much in 2016 through 2020.
Well, unfortunately, that's the people's decision. They've got to put people in there to support the man, and he can't do much about those elections. He can tell you who to vote for, but you still got to get out there and support the people who go in there and support him. Because if you don't, you're right. He's going to have a very difficult time. He can do whatever he can through executive order and make decisions. I think he should start by what we talked about a long time ago. Start breaking up the cabal and put these pieces around the country.
I think that's an excellent first step. You know, and again, if Trump gets in, I think he's going to do everything within his power to make changes. I really do. I just think he's going to get limited. You know, I mean, he can't control the budget. That said, Biden's had a field day with the budget. You know, executive order after executive order. They gave him a blank check. They being both parties. So now we've gone from 32 trillion in debt to 34 in months. Projected at 36 by the end of this year. And God help us if Biden or whoever becomes the Democratic nominee gets in, we'll be at 40 to 45 trillion by 2026.
And I'll give you something else to worry about that nobody's talking about. We don't get a Republican sitting in that office. There are Supreme Court justices that are getting very, very old, and they're hanging on, hoping that a Republican gets to replace them. But if Biden goes in again, they may not be able to finish that 4 terms, and there goes our balance on the Supreme Court.
Well, it's not. My point being, it's not just president; it's Congress, right? I mean, yeah, you could have Trump in there, and that'll help with the nominees, but the Senate's got to pass them. You got a Democratic Senate; they're just going to stonewall it, right? You know, we talked about the primaries. I think the state level, the federal level, even the local level, people need to get out and vote in these primaries, and send a message. You know,
because remember, as we've said before, the party doesn't choose candidates; you do.
Exactly.
And you don't want 20% or 30% of the party deciding where 100% of the people have a choice, what your choice is. And that's what we're facing.
So to that point, Bill, we have about 2 minutes. As someone who's actively involved in a local, you know, can you kind of talk about why people should be going to the primary other than president? Because everybody goes to do that primary, but just in general, why it is so important. Just expound on what you were just saying.
Look, if you talk about, there's an old line that all politics is local. And that's really true. I mean, the people that have the most effect on you on a day-to-day basis are your town councils, are your people who run the counties, people who even work at the state level. And all those positions are open. And if you look at the state of North Carolina, where we are, they've done a hell of a job to get there and to maintain lowering taxes for all of us from almost 8% down to less than 4%, paying off deficit and having a rainy day fund in the billions, attracting business, which brings jobs to our place, starting to take on issues with education. And they've done a great job there. If they lose their supermajority and we lose the governor's job, we have a problem. So we need to reelect all those people. We need to give them more space if we can. We need to get a governor in there who will support what we need to do rather than what they want to do. And also keep in mind, on a very simple basis, under current law, the governor is the tipping point in all boards of election. I know there was a law passed by the General Assembly, but that's in the courts right now. So right. At this particular point, we got a problem. And the governor decides the tipping point as we talk right now. So owning that governorship is important for how valid our elections are going to be across the state. And, we need to work locally. And, and I tell people all the time, someone said to me, well, if my congressman is doing what he needs to do, what do I need to do? I said, well, first of all, you need to reelect him and put him back in office. And number two, find your relatives and friends in other parts of the state or in this country. Get with them and tell them why that congressman that represents them doesn't belong there, and convince them to talk their friends into switching how they vote. That's how we make change. We're very fortunate in Brunswick where we are that we have a lot of good Republicans sitting in a lot of good jobs, and they've done a great job. However, we need to keep them there.
And to that point, it's time to wrap things up, kids. So one final point I'll make is you need to get out and vote in the primary, because the person you get to vote for in November is largely determined in the next couple of weeks or months, depending on where you are.
And I will tell you this, we have several cases where there is no Democratic candidate after the primary.
So it becomes the general.
Yeah. So so if you don't win the primary, it's over. So, if you don't vote in the primary, you're not going to get a choice.
So on that note, get out and effing vote. That's what I'm going to close it out with. All right, kids.
Now, is that a choice? Do I effing or do I vote? Have a good one, guys.
On that note, we're going to say goodbye. Give us that like, all that good stuff, because we're out of time. See you next time on Reclaiming America. Bill.
Bye.
Bill.